Okay, so I figured I would make this little video on when you buy hand-dyed yarn or some kind of nicer farm bases, fiber bases, it's going to come in a loop like this, also known as a hank. And if you try to work off of this, it's going to be a nightmare. So a couple different ways you can do it is have a friend or loved one holds it open, you cut the ties and you roll it into a ball by hand, or you can put it over the back of a chair. It's a little bit fussy. So what I have and many people have, and I'm actually caking up an order for someone right now who doesn't have this stuff. Typically that's an add-on, but it is an option for some dyers. Not all dyers offer it. It is time consuming. But anyway, so what you do is you take your loop and you want to just make sure it's all open in the center, no strings are crossed over, loop it over and push up on the Swift, which keeps it open. This is just my tag I put there so that I know when I'm winding multiples, you know, the tag that goes to this yarn when it's done. So cut the ties. I always cut as close to the end as possible so that I have minimal waste of the yarn. The bases that I use are fairly expensive, so I like to preserve as much as possible. And then what I do is at the first rotation I turn the skein as I go so that I can have a snag-free or minimized passing. So this is the other side cut end. So I just tuck that back here. And there we go. So now I'm all the way around. And I'm going to make a slip knot in the end, which is dual purpose. So primarily it's going to allow the knot to stay, the center string to stay in this notch that's on the winder. And both of these are Stanwood, which so far I have found to be the nicest to work with. Oh, and I still got a snag anyway. Hopefully it won't work that out. So okay, now we're in shape. So you just wind and wind and wind, and what's happening is the Swift is keeping the loop open. So like a friend or loved one would with their arms, keeping tension to keep it open. With a chair, you're mostly just trying to keep the center of the hank, it's very squeaky, you know, so that the strands can't cross over basically, which is what you're trying to avoid by caking it in the first place or winding it into a ball. So you could just have a Swift and wind it into a ball by hand. You don't have to have, I don't know why she's so squeaky. So squeak. What's happening with you right now? You can just wind it into a ball, but I happen to really like the cake. It's less hard on my hands, and you can decide to pull from the center or the outside, and you know, there's benefits to both, so you know, it's really a preference thing. Some people like to pull from the center because then the cake sits flat right on the table, or in your project bag, and I prefer to pull from the outside because then if I make a mistake and I have to frog it or rip it out, I can wind the yarn back on, whereas when you pull from the center you kind of just have this like separate glob. So that. And then to finish it off, to keep it as tidy as possible, I take a couple of rounds of this end off. I make a slip knot on this end as well. And then, so the center pull string is still in the notch, and then I wrap this around all the way, pretty snug, and then secure it, just going under those same strands. And that way, if you want to pull from the outside, it's easy to identify that. And then the tag with all of the yarn information will go in the middle on the slip knot I made initially. And then what that does is it makes it so that, one, you have your yarn information. If you pull from the outside, you can keep that on there. But if you pull from the center, it'll make it so that you don't lose the center pull and have to go digging for it, because it's connected to the tag. And then I just kind of take those same outside strands and I tuck the tag in just so it's not flopping all over the place. And that's how I cake it up. So I'm gonna pack this order. This is one. It's the one I just showed. 2. And 3. And 4. So all of those are caked up, and that's how you work from when you get indie dyed yarn or really nice natural fiber. It'll often come in the same way. So just whatever you do, don't try to just work off the loop. It'll just become a big nest of expensive and very soft mess. Okay, thanks, bye!